Ritesh, I think press the
I
button.
agree. Yeah.
So it's not
Well-
easy to summarize a book like this. Like Michael was saying before, I've jotted down some notes. And it's interesting that Sunny starts by saying that having been and being strategy consultant in his own life, he's not really done what he keeps advising others and gets paid for doing. And I related to that. And he said it was more intuitive for him. And I know that's how it is for me. And I call myself an intuitive opportunist. I think Sunny is perhaps more structured. I don't know.
Wow.
But he's obviously been very successful at this. He gets paid multiple of what everyone else does, even though I'm not convinced he's multiples of the quality of others, but he is very good. And I always read his column in the Sunday Nation, as maybe others here do. And he's a smart guy and very exposed to reality. I like what he says about strategy is something that shouldn't just be for the brainy professors or the clever hired guns. And elsewhere later, he says that you shouldn't, of course, give these sorts of characters the strategic plan to do for you, but rather to have them guide you, do it for yourselves. And that's something I very much related to. And I always tell my clients that I should be doing as little as possible. And he talks about being the guide. And some of you may have seen my article recently on leaders being like orchestral conductors, where leaders don't play any of the instruments, but they bring the players together into one unified entity. Just like the leader of the larger the organization comes, and as his became more than a one-man band, he's not the thinker, he says, anymore, but more the guide of the thinkers around him. He talks about strategy being about future gazing into the mist, anticipating trends, and someone who does strategy must see the whole puzzle. And that reminded me of the work I did with the World Bank and with the Aga Khan University leadership program that I did alongside the Harvard Kennedy School, of looking down from the balcony. That you come up from the dance floor and you watch the whole dance floor. And as you look at strategy, you look downward over the whole picture, you look backward over history, you look outward into the environment, you look forward into the future, and as important as all of these, you look inwardly into yourself. So this one of seeing the whole puzzle, he calls it, and then not stopping, of course, at strategy development, but focusing on execution. And when I do this kind of work, again, obviously it's central, because too many people, it's the tick in the box that, yes, we've done strategy, as Sunny Bindra keeps returning to, but then it's put on the shelf. And that's why he says it shouldn't just be this over elegant, complicated, lengthy, PowerPoint filled and Excel spreadsheet filled document, but a guideline that stays alive and can be shared with everyone, not just with the people in senior management. He talks about how strategic retreats are often so boring and such a waste of time. And I know that I expect, as I run such events, which I do a lot of, I expect them to be as he does, to be interesting, energizing, satisfying, demanding, and playful. These are the words he uses, to which I relate. He also talks about something that I very much relate to, of keeping things simple, and how too many consultants overcomplicate with fancy theories and fancy language. And it's interesting for me that the more educated my clients, people like the World Bank, people like research institutes with PhDs and board members who are professors and the like, they expect things to be complicated, and unless they are, they mistake something simple for being simplistic, for trivializing the whole thing. And I've had several experiences of people who, when I described my approach to strategy development, looked down their noses at it until we got into it. And then they realized that actually it's okay, even for a very educated person like me, to be challenged by someone like you as a consultant to express what I thought were complicated things in a simple way. And here I like Einstein's quote very much, that unless you're able to express complicated matter in simple ways, you've not properly understood it. I 100% agree with that. It shouldn't be secretive. It shouldn't be the generals only or a need to know basis. And when I do strategic planning, I typically start with the senior management team, sometimes with the board. If not with the board, it goes up to the board and then cascades downward, knowing that you have to select the language and the content depending on who it is that you're talking to. On Saturday, I will be with people on the shop floor of a food manufacturing company with whom I developed the strategic plan recently, and we're sharing with them appropriately. And at that level, I find that it's more to do with the culture, the values, the behaviors, than with strategy, with long-term strategy. He talks about the 4 steps a lot, of diagnosis, positioning, story, and actions, fair enough. About using one's strengths to handle challenges and overcome weaknesses, yeah, the SWOT analysis. And about identifying where we are unique, where we're different, where we have competitive advantage. And he loves Apple, the example of Apple, and how they focus not being all things to everyone, but to go for that luxury market, for the up market, to focus there and to keep innovating. Leaders' role is very important, to lead, to align people around them, to keep referring to the strategy, not for it, as we were saying earlier, to gather dust on a shelf. And as I look for a case study of who keeps strategy and culture alive, I typically think of Davis and Shirtliff, where I've been a director for 20 years, where we very much talk strategy and refer to it with other staff members, with other stakeholders. It's a really a joy to be part of that. He says you should stay humble. Earlier on, 1 or 2 people weren't sure if Sonny does. We should have a mix of technical and emotional skills among our people, and I very much relate to that. And again, this adaptive leadership talks about the technical and the non-technical skills. And in too many organizations, there's an overemphasis on the technical and an inadequate emphasis on the non-technical. And the World Bank is a good example of that, where they're specialists in water or energy or whatever field they are in, but they're not so good at communicating, and certainly not in simple ways that broader audiences can understand. And that's why they set up at one time this collaborative leadership for development program, which I became a member of, to help their government clients overcome the non-technical challenges to project implementation resulting from strategies evolved with the World Bank. You have to learn by doing. You probably need luck, and he has this nice quote of luck being where preparation meets opportunity. Seneca. I don't think I ever realized it was Seneca who originated that quote all those centuries ago. He has some interesting comments on consultants, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I have some examples of consultants who copy paste global patterns without adapting them to local circumstances, to the individual organization. My favorite example of such behavior is McKinsey. And when Martin O'Dwyer was CEO of McKinsey, I was called in to help KCB heal from McKinsey, to heal from the consultant who had developed a strategy from which they were suffering and which demoralized and demotivated the staff, which is not unusual for McKinsey. As I was reading the book, I was thinking about how all this relates to our Rotary Club. Are we strategic thinkers, or are we just a collection of committees and projects? What binds all of this together? Does the board have more of a strategic view that isn't so shared with others? How does it work with the Rotaract Club, with our Rotaract clubs, with our Interact clubs? What is our strategy on attracting and retaining active and engaged members and having them enjoy their time with the club while giving service and developing themselves as well? We are part of RI, of course, and its vision and mission and values and the four-way test. What are our supportive identities in relation to culture? What is our culture? We used to be viewed as the Rotary Club of Nairobi, elitist, arrogant. I don't think the reality was ever as much as the perception. But where are we now? Because we're certainly not that. But what are we? What is our brand? What is our unique selling proposition? And I think it'll be good, and Nelson and I talked a bit about this before, and I've talked with Josephine about it, given that we're exactly 1 month away now from the new Rotary year, what should we be doing, having read Sunny Bindra or not, to make sure that we have a good strategy which is well delivered for high impact going forwards? And if we have a strategy retreat, as I've done from time to time in the past with incoming presidents, who should be at it, what should its purpose be, and what should the follow-up be, not least at board meetings? So these are my opening comments. And Nelson, let me just hand over to you to reflect on what we discussed before when you called me.
Okay, sorry, thank you. Sorry, my lights are not.
We hear you.
Thank you, Mike. I think one of the things is that these books needs to be very practical. I think we can't be reading in isolation what we are reading. So, sorry, I'm by the side of the road. Traffic caught up with me, so I had to pull over. And,
but we can hear you well. We can hear you well.
Ah, okay.
And there's good light.
Yes. I think one of the things is that as a club and individuals, we have to look at how does strategy apply for us. That's the only thing where reading will not just be reading. So with Mike as a professional and an expert in this, I wanted you to guide us into how we can relate this to the club, and secondly, how we can relate it to our lives and the businesses we are running. So if you can do a 3D input in the whole of this. It will help us glean as much as possible. And I'm seeing some few young Rotarians joining us, like Eileen and Dr. Beatrice. So it will help us gain more. And probably in the near future, Dr. Ambassador Josephine can probably call us with your moderation. We can design a strategy for the club and see how we can do this. Those will be my thoughts for now.
Yes, Josephine said she would probably only be able to join us later, but we've got this recording. And
Yes.
so let's see with her, hoping she'll be able to join us. But before we get on to that, and it's 20 to 7 now, let's get some more from others. And we're still only 6 people, aren't we? Yeah, we're still only 6 people, including me and you, Nelson.
Okay.
To resume the conversation we were having earlier about what stood out from the book and what reactions to the book. Beatrice, good evening. And you've not heard what we were talking about before, so you won't be influenced by it. How did you react to reading Sunny Bindra's book?
I believe she might have lost connectivity. She was with us, but at the moment...
Oh yeah, she's not there. So
No.
Eileen is here. Let's hear from Eileen, because she also wasn't in on the earlier discussion.
So maybe a quick one. Eileen is a new to be Rotarian. So I invited her because she's a very good reader and leader. So so Eileen, feel free to join in and give us your input. I know she has read a bit of the book.
Welcome, Eileen.
Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me. Let me see if I can put it.
It's fine.
Okay. So I'm here. I'm still in the office. So far, yes, as Nelson has said, I haven't yet finished the book. However, the much I read, I felt very challenged because as I'm finishing my MBA, and we do a lot of the SWOT analysis, the PESTEL analysis. So when I read Sunny Bindra and how he was challenging that all we do is just do a lot of SWOT analysis, and there's a place where he says one of the tools you need to use is, go to the ground. Don't like swim by the river. Don't be at the treetop listening to the hums of the river. So if I would apply that to the SWOT analysis, to the PESTEL, I thought of it as how we know how to note down things and say, these are the strengths, these are the weak in an organization, that is, these are the strengths, these are the weaknesses, this is how we should do it. But then we really don't go down to the people and to the ones who are doing it to get exactly what needs to change. We need to put our ears on the ground. And also there's a point in which Sunny Bindra said we should also not, when we grow older, we tend to ignore the younger people and what they, because they know what's going on. And I don't know if it's male or female, but Sunny Bindra likened this to how Apple transformed just by listening to what people are doing, what's new on the ground, what is it that is happening, and that is how they moved from to the iPhones and distinct and made themselves unique by offering better services and services that stood out just by listening to the people on the ground and having everything all in one phone. Yeah, that's my take so far on it.
Okay, thanks, Eileen. Michael, you've done strategy work with communities on development projects. How do you keep your ear to the ground? Because I know you do.
I could tell you a story about that. My daughter said to me, she said, "You're working for the UN, running around the world, traveling in the front of airplanes, staying in 5-star hotels, giving a seminar on poverty, and get back on your plane and go to another meeting." My daughter. I didn't do that actually, but anyway, I never liked staying in 5-star hotels anyway. I always tried to find a place I could stay with local people. But I always, when I went on a what we used to call a mission, a trip, I always tried to get 1 or 2 days to get as far out of the capital city as I possibly could. And so I would hire a car. And quite often it was a UN car. And I remember once in Somalia going with 12 cars because they all wanted to come with me. And mine had a flag on it. I thought, my goodness, I'm really going to find out from local people what's going on here. But generally, before COVID, I went to Georgia and Romania, and I did that. And I went out into, I wouldn't say into the bush, but into the rural area. And talk with people, and it's unbelievable how easy it is to talk to people. I mean, you come up with a car,
particularly Romania.
Well, for Romania, for example, it's full of nice people, except one who's missing, but he's with us tonight, so that's great.
Yeah, I declare my interest. Both my parents are Romanian.
So I went and I saw a lady in a little house with a garden and everything. I love gardens, so I wanted to find out all about the garden. So I wanted to talk to her, so I stopped the car and got out, but I had my interpreter with me. And of course, it's very intimidating, this car and this white guy. I mean, who the heck are we? So I always said to my interpreter or whoever, talk to the person, first of all, tell them who we are, that we're not the police or anything. We just want to have a chat to find out, and the rest of it, what you're doing, and can we have a chat with you? And that's all. It won't get reported anywhere. You won't hear of us again or anything. And they loved it. It was never a problem. I remember getting shown gardens, and I learned something once. I learned about composting in a garden. That was in Sri Lanka. I won't bore you with that story. But so anyway, that was boo to my daughter. But going to this book, I don't really think I understood what strategy was after reading it. Strategy to me has a goal. And to me, I think of in terms of systems and systems analysis. And a strategy essentially has to be a system, has to look at every aspect of what you're looking at. So you have to have a goal. What is your goal? We couldn't find out from this book. It seemed to like maximizing revenue. Was that the goal? Maximizing profit? Was that? You don't know. Mike, how long do you want me to go talking for? Because I've got about 12 points. I'd love to.
No, I think let's pause there. And I want to ask Ritesh. Where are you on SWOT analysis and PESTEL? Do you use that in your strategizing in your office work?
Yes. Well, thank you. First of all, the disclaimer: I have not read this book. However, you gave a very good summary, and yes, of course, SWOT analysis, PESTEL. I think these are very good tools to use. I would like to add something here. This is something which Professor Michael Hopkins just said about the goal, and what I'd like to say is this is how I think of things when we talk about strategy. And something very unique always comes up into my mind, and I was immediately drawn towards, if you recall the story of the Trojan horse, the story of Troy. And, it's like when the Greek wanted to attack, the first thing which they just wanted to attack and win. So that was, of course, the goal, like how Professor Michael just said. And of course, that's when they said, okay, this is the end goal. We have to attack. How do we get through? So that actually got them thinking, we have to make a peace offering. We have to develop a strategy where, of course, they had to check out the terrain. It's like everything falls in place, and you can actually start working your way towards achieving the goal once you know specifically when and how. So I really like the fact that Michael Hopkins, professor, actually mentioned that there has to be a specific goal in mind for someone to actually end up developing a strategy, because you have to defragment everything in order to develop it.
Let me tell you a bit about how I run my strategy workshops.
Yeah.
It's a methodology I've developed over the years, and it incorporates the SWOT, which, in case anyone is not familiar, is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and PESTEL is the political, economic, social, technological, environmental, legal, etc. stuff, the outside situation. And strengths and weaknesses are internal, opportunities and threats are external. So what I start with is the balanced scorecard framework. And Sani Bindra just mentions that in passing as something that people have come up with and tend to overcomplicate, which they do, which I don't. And the balanced scorecard was devised by two Harvard professors, Kaplan and Norton. And it was as a result of seeing unbalanced scorecards that were over-focused on the bottom line, the financial profit, the revenue and the profit. And it was insufficiently focused on what led to that, what they call the lead indicators with this financial sustainability, as we're tending to call it now with longer term views in mind, as the lag indicator. So what are the lead indicators? First you have, well, in a commercial context, you have products and customers. In organizations like Rotary, we would talk about products, services, and beneficiaries. And there's also the brand. That's one. You have what Kaplan and Norton called learning and growth, which is our people, and we call it our people. And you have systems and processes. And so if you take all of these, and they're all interrelated with cause and effect within and between the four quadrants, you get a balanced scorecard. So what I have people do is I put 4 flip charts on the wall, and each flip chart together, each flip chart represents one of the quadrants. And then people, if there are maybe 15 people or whatever, they may be a 3 round table, something like that. They have Post-its and they come up with what I call bricks of achievement on first, a historic wall of greatness. So you have the 4 quadrants of products and beneficiaries, if we're talking about Rotary, and brand, our people, systems and processes, and financial sustainability. And so we look back over the last year or the last 5 years or whatever with bricks of achievement. What are we proud of that we've achieved? What do we feel good about? What is our story, our historic story to tell? And having done that, we then do our next wall of greatness, which is the future aspirational wall. It's the same 4 quadrants. We now take the Post-its and we look ahead. And normally when you do a strategic plan, it's 5 years ahead, 3 years ahead, whatever. And you imagine, I have people imagine that they are there now at that end time. So if we're looking at our Rotary timescales, we imagine we're at the end of June 2023. Everything we wanted to see happen has happened. What does it look like? Post-its of achievements, of aspirations. And so if you take into account now the SWOT and the PESTEL, by looking at that future wall of aspiration, you have the achievements from your historic wall that are explained by strengths, the S and the SWOT that are available now for the future period. You have taken advantage of opportunities. You have overcome weaknesses, you have protected yourself from threats and risks, and you have developed new strengths relevant to those new opportunities. And indeed, the weaknesses are relative to the future opportunities. And you've taken account of this external environment, and you will have looked at you will have looked at external stakeholders, gone around and had your ear to the ground, gone to the river, and you have this future wall of greatness. And once you've done that future wall, I have one volunteer that I pick out, someone I think can be a good storyteller. Sunny talks a lot about stories, the importance of stories and storytelling. So I pick someone out and have them imagine that they are Margareta Wagasheru, and they have come to report on the story of this organization and their historic wall, their future wall, different volunteers, to summarize it all in a vivid way. And often we record these stories. So once we've looked at the multi-year aspiration wall, we do a one-year wall. So what do we have to complete within a year's time in order to launch towards the full strategic plan period actualization? And we can do that in our Rotary Club too, where future beyond 1 year timescales, it's a sketch, it's a brief sketch relative to where we are and where we are not, where we say yes and where we say no, to ongoing relationships that develop, to our culture, how do we attract and retain good people, all this compliance stuff that's come in so heavily now on systems and processes, the fundraising, the partnerships, the grants, all of this comes together on these flip charts and the bricks of achievement. And when we look at the future wall, we then compare that to the vision, mission, values, purpose, those kinds of statements to make sure that they align. And that then is the big picture from which you then go to the specific objectives and the who's got to do what by when, and the budgets and the performance management framework, which is then the basis, or should be the basis, not least, of board meetings and the committees. So that's my approach to strategic plan development. And I've done this so many times, maybe not as often as Sunny Bindra, and certainly not paid as much as he is, but it's what I do with a lot of my life for the last 20 years or so. So having said that, let me seek comments on this approach as it might relate to what we could do in the very near future for our Rotary Club, including the Rotaractors one way or another. Beatrice, let's hear from you. Good evening. Unless Beatrice has disappeared again. Beatrice, you're there. And good evening, Jessica.
Good evening, and yes, I am. My apologies, I did disappear. I shall try and have my video on in a short while, but thank you for, there we go. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you for inviting me to comment, and also I'm glad to be participating on such an important thing as strategy. I think just to hone in my answer to the question with regards to strategy for Rotary, I think a big part of my everyday life plays into how I see what we do in groups, Rotary being one of the important ones. And for me, what I like about the strategy you've just described is having a clear picture of what our current situation is, where we aspire to go so that we have a vision, and then how we can create the shortest distance between where we are and where we want to be. So I really like the aspirational element of what you've described, because I don't know whether I can still call myself a new-ish Rotarian. In the first year or so of being in Rotary, being the pseudo-academic, because I'm a bit of a rebel in the academic world. I agree with the notion that they overcomplicate things. And so being a pseudo-academic, I wanted to come in and understand the structures and systems and everything to do with Rotary, and then see how I can master my role as either a committee member or, anything other than a rhino. That's what I didn't want to be. And then throw myself at it. But I realized that one of the key elements of any Rotary work we do is that whoever sits in the leadership position, and that wouldn't be an individual, but a group of people, have a united vision about a project and what we are trying to achieve. And once that's clear, then almost by self-selection, we are doers. So, for instance, my first project was the Christmas party in Mathare. Once I sat down with Winnie, who was a great hand-holding help, and I was then clear that what we're trying to do is meet the needs of those children in Mathare. It was very easy for us, Eva Clinton and myself, to get creative about the how. So I think, and I hope I'm answering the question, when it comes to Rotary work, I think it's really critical that we all see, almost like a big a painting on the wall, where is it we're aiming to go? What are we trying to achieve? And I think then all the creative juices and the participatory roles of Rotarians who are on the board, those who are on the committee, and those who are the helping hands will come into its own. So in terms of how I see Rotary going forward, I think clarity of our outcome with regards to a project would be really, really helpful. Thanks.
Thank you, Beatrice. I've got some on the chat group here from Ritesh. Do comment, Ritesh, on what you've said, and then I'll ask Jessica, who admittedly, you say you've not read the book, but what is your advice to future leaders, given your experience as a Rotary president in strategic planning and execution of such plans? But Ritesh first, quickly, relative to your chat contribution.
Thank you, dear Mike. I wanted just to share. You see, you've explained quite a bit about your experience with, for example, Davis and Shirtliff, and I can almost guarantee from what I've seen on social media, the advertising, and also from what you've told us about the company, that you're always probably training the new recruits. I am guaranteeing that an organization to be that strong, you're also very careful in the kind of recruits you're taking in. So when we talk about Rotary, and of course, we do know that Rotary is very specific in the sense that different clubs have different identities. They have a different modus operandi. And if we want our club, for example, to sustain itself, whilst doing projects and whilst ensuring that the membership is healthy and vibrant. My only concern is that what are we doing to ensure that the right individuals are being approached? It begins with members. And this is where the quality and versus quantity matter comes in. So I think all I had to say is that at the end of the day, it's like when you're working in a team or team building, individuals have to be aligned. If when individuals go to a gym, of course, all are individuals who exercise. I'd like to know more about KEPSA, you know, you probably have more to share with us, relating organizations such as Rotary KEPSA.
So, sorry, who are you asking, Ritesh?
No, I was asking you that if you agree with me about this situation, the same also applies to KEPSA. That
Oh, I see, I see.
yes.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I'll just say about Davis and Shurtleff that developing talent and promotion from within is absolute, as you've been seeing on LinkedIn and Facebook recently, with George Bugwa having just been promoted from Finance and ICT Director to Group CEO. And of course, George is a Rotarian. And I'm happy to say that as a sort of mentor to him over the years, I was the one who suggested he could accelerate his personal development by becoming a Rotarian. And given their geographic location, I introduced him to the industrial area Rotary Club. And it has indeed greatly developed George, not least in his communication skills. So it's a great case study for talent management, talent development, which then attracts good people. And once they're there, they are happy to stay because, as the chairman, Alec Davis, says, you're here not for a job, but for a career, which implies development, learning, growth, fulfillment. Jessica, what I wanted to hear from you on is, you were president a few years ago now. Gosh, I don't want you to be offended, but I think I can start calling you an elder. What is your advice, given your experience, to incoming leaders on all this strategy stuff? I don't know if Jessica's there. No, she's dropped. Oh, yeah, Jessica. Jessica's tablet is there. I don't know if Jessica's there. Well, if she's not there.
Sorry, I've unmuted Mike.
Oh, okay, okay, good, good. Just as I was giving up on you. Wonderful.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Somehow it's very faint, but if you can hear me, there.
I can hear you very well.
Okay, good. Now I've turned off. I had muted you somehow. Your question was, and I want to be clear, I'm answering the right question.
Yeah, you were president a few years ago.
Yes.
How did strategy work during your year? How have you seen it since? And above all, what's your advice on the do's and don'ts in relation to incoming leaders for upcoming strategy?
Okay. As you know, I was thrown in the deep end, having been traveling actually, and when I came back, I went to dinner at Salim's with a few other people, and he says, Jessica, how would you like to be the president? Because we've talked about this, and Marie is not well, and she's going to go to the US for treatment, as you all know. And at that point, I decided to accept for two reasons, or maybe several reasons, but some of which were that I have been a Rotarian since 1999, October. And here I was, having performed and served in many capacities as a director of the various committees. And I thought, oh, well, I can do this, you know. Little did I know that you do have to put that strategy down on paper, in place. I had very little time to do that. So what I put together and what I believed was that there are many members in the club who are senior Rotarians, who are knowledgeable, who have played all these roles. And I said, okay, I'll accept this on condition that you serve. It'll be good for you to serve. Now, one thing you should never do is make people serve who are not willing to serve or who don't want to, but are not doing it for the right reasons, because it's going to haunt you down the line or down the road. It was easy because there were some very, very good members who supported me in every way. And had it not been for some of those people, it would have been a terrible year. But as it turns out, we put something together very quickly. First of which was the installation. My strategy was easy because I knew what I wanted to convey, and I knew what the club should achieve, having played in all these roles. But there's a but. You have to have the team together who are cohesive. And that may not always be possible. You start to see fissures, is that the right word? You start to see cracks, and you realize somehow your strategy is not working very well. Perhaps some of the things that we were able to achieve, and we achieved quite a lot, considering we were thrown a curveball by COVID. We were thrown a curveball by a hotel where we were meeting going out of business. We were thrown curveballs that a lot of the members in my my board of directors, there were about 5 who had serious issues. Some were legitimate personal issues. Others were perhaps personal, not legitimate personal, but just personal issues. So your strategy should transcend those things. And if you can plan and be able to think it through, what happens if what I've put in place doesn't work? You know, I had, of course, thought of having deputies who are deputizing for the directors, but it turns out that there were some less experienced Rotarians, in some cases less committed or less, I use the word less, but for a better word, I should say they were ineffective because of perhaps lack of training, lack of having been Rotarians for long enough, blowing with the wind rather than sticking to the script, you know. And I hope I'm making sense in what I'm saying. But
what I'm getting from you, Jessica, is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Which is Peter Drucker saying. And I remember when I was doing these strategic planning workshops for our club, I don't know, 20 whatever years ago, the quadrant we spent most time on was the Our People one, because that is where culture comes in. And you use the word, you need a cohesive team. Ritesh used the word aligned. And that is the big challenge, not least with volunteers. And we have this Rainbow Club of all sorts of backgrounds, generations, interests. And that is the big challenge. Every year, every president has to spend so much time calming the waters, mediating, and trying to get this adequacy of alignment and cohesive. And I think that if we are to have this strategic planning session, its prime purpose will be our code of conduct, how we behave with each other, how we respect each other, how we communicate, how we use and don't use WhatsApp, the role of the president, so that the president doesn't have to be spending so much time firefighting. Who is with the president? What is the role of past leaders, the elders? These are the things to talk about at Rotary strategy retreats, such as I have led in the past, and we will always need to have. The politics, the egos, all these things that come into play and can so easily disrupt what otherwise would be wonderful projects and great fellowship and actualized strategies.
That's very, very true, Mike. I think if I would say something to any incoming president, you have to know that you're not bigger than the club. At the same time, you do have to have time for those sessions to plan with people who have been there, who know, and who can do an SOP of the club and say, what do we need to do? Where are things going wrong? How can we deal with this without causing more rifts?
Yeah.
How can we deal with disrespect from people? I've been very, very impressed by some of what I've seen with Gideon, for example. And I think that, yes, they should definitely have those meetings. They should do what I've said, identify where they need to put more emphasis. A president should not have to be fighting openly, when there should be a club, a team behind, and nobody's above the club. There are many.
Let's hear from Margareta. Margareta, you've been around for quite some years now. You've seen a lot of these goings on. What thoughts for you in terms of our strategic future relative to all these issues?
Well, I think I feel sort of like Beatrice, right? She came in just a couple of months after me. So I also feel rather almost not exactly a newcomer, but I haven't, and then I was away for the year in 2021. But I think building unity is one of the critical strategic values that when you talk about our people. And I was with Jessica, and I'm a great admirer of Jessica. And I love the way she said about taking the initiative to launch her year with this beautiful ceremony with someone from her homeland. But I do think one of the key issues is addressing this rainbow unity. And again, going back to the values of Rotary, because I think, when you join a Rotary Club, you do want to know, what does it mean? How is this club different from other clubs? I mean, should I waste my time, really? I mean, why is this, why do they think they're special? And I think that's what needs to be the first order of business in strategy. I think one of the things I thought was interesting about Sunny's book is at the outset, he said, you know, you can go to these retreats and people will be stuck in the logic of the strategy, but they don't get the pathos, the emotional involvement. And he was saying that this is key. You know, you have to get the passion and people with you on that level of it transcends pure reason, so that, you know, the interest is deeper than simply just a mental, rational perspective. And he said, you know, if you don't, you'll just, you know, flop around the whole year, get back to the drawing board, being told that nothing changed. And unless you add that element, it's really doesn't go far. So I think, I don't know, I think Jessica had a huge challenge, and I thought she handled it as best she could. But I do think the issue of building unity as Rotarians, and because it is, you know, the motto, service above self, is key. And the biggest challenge she had was other people's ego, and maybe a small element of her own. But I mean, it's difficult. And I think it was difficult.
Ego is often a problem. When I ran the first ever strategic retreat for KEPSA, the private sector umbrella body, I proposed one of the values to be low ego. And I think that's vital for any volunteer group in particular.
Yes.
Nelson, you've got your hand up, and I hope it's not only to tell us that it's 7:20 and we have 10 minutes to go.
No. I think two things, two agendas of this hand. One is to request that we extend this session by probably 30 more minutes with a permission from the members, because I think this is a very important conversation. I would want that from the members, that we give me the permission to extend that. And then secondly, it's more substantive. As a club, I think we need to realize that we are 93 years old, and a lot of things have changed. Culture, the people, the processes may not have changed, but what we are offering has not changed in terms of serving humanity. But the culture and the people who are delivering the humanity, quote unquote, has changed in terms of the age. So I think one of the things as a club, in my opinion, we need to diagnose where we are at. We think again, so that we can position ourselves not only to attract the right members, but also to deliver the solutions in the best way we can. And also, that thing also, we need to tell our story better. I think, thank God for PP Ritesh. He was able to tell our story better out there to the world. And I think the other presidents have moved on and told the story better. But I think we haven't told the club's story better than we could have. And of course, the actions we take, we are more into ego trips more often than not, that we derail our actions. So those would be my comments.
Thank you, Nelson. Yeah, definitely diagnosing, thinking again, all these go into strategic thinking, don't they? And rethinking and innovating and continuous improvement and overcoming setbacks, not least things that poor Jessica had to deal with, like COVID. I said some of us did less mourning over the passing away of Grand Regency, Lyco Regency, because we didn't anymore have to struggle to get there and back. Michael, you are asking about or suggesting we should have a BHAG. And please, for those who don't know what big, hairy, audacious girls are. Tell them, I think you're less hairy than you used to be, but tell us about BHAGs.
I think looking at Rotary and being with you for a year now, I think it would be very useful to discuss really what is the BHAG. It's a rather crude expression, I know, but what really is the goal of the club? And I think it'd be very useful to sit back a little bit and ask, because the sorts of things that I see happening, a lot of good people doing a lot of good things, but where is it leading? And over the longer term, where will it go? So I think it would be quite useful to have a discussion on such a point, although it's a bit late right now. What I like about
I
tonight,
think that
Mike,
we would do at the retreat, wouldn't we, Michael?
probably would. But let me say what I liked about tonight, Mike, is how you brought the discussion away actually from the book into the Rotary Club itself. And I think it's quite interesting, and I learned a lot tonight about that. But I did kind of miss the systems approach and where it's going and where it wants to be. But perhaps I missed that. Thanks, Mike.
The systems approach to what?
To how one reaches the BHAG. What are all the elements of the systems?
Well, my systems approach is the balanced scorecard, Walls of Greatness. And definitely, whenever I do the aspirational walls, particularly the longer term one, if I see too much marginal linear extrapolation, which I often do, I then say, hey, what about some BHAGs? And it's not some, it's one or maximum two, isn't it? And by the way, this BHAG comes from Jim Collins's book, Good to Great, which has many other wonderful characteristics that made ordinary organizations leap ahead, like living the founder's values, having big, hairy, audacious goals, and so forth. So definitely, we as a Rotary Club, who are we relative to other Rotary clubs? Who are we relative to Lions clubs? Why should someone join us? What is our uplifting purpose about changing lives? What are our themes? What is our history? What will our legacy be? These are the sort of conversations that we will have if we have this strategy retreat. Eileen, it's been a long time since we heard from you. How have you been reacting to what you've been hearing?
Actually, there's a place where you mentioned...
We need you a bit louder. Can you be louder?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
All right. There's a point you mentioned.
It's gone faint again.
Oh, I'm so... Okay. What about now?
Better.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. There's a point you mentioned, culture eats strategy for breakfast, and that kind of hit me because I just thought about what we implement in our organization and how it plays out, and usually the people culture, the employees, instead of probably implementing strategy, they have all the strategies laid out for everyone to follow, and the employee culture kind of plays a huge role as to whether the strategy will be implemented. And then you talked about, there was a conversation about ego, and I felt that's also a big one. And so those two things stood out for me in the conversation.
Okay, when I quote this culture eats strategy for breakfast, it speaks to me like it's a competition, a ranking, which one is more important than the other. But as I do my work with the Balanced Scorecard and incorporate culture, particularly in the Our People quadrant, I help people develop a culture for strategy that is an integral component of the overall strategy. So it's not either one or the other. And it's about leadership and followership and alignment and cohesiveness and values and all these things, that the question is, okay, we are where we are on our culture. What do we need to do more of and less of? What do we have to stop doing and start doing to get a healthier culture with less wasted energy on conflict and egos and silos and board and non-board and whatever, and so that we can operate as one team. And there are things you can do and agree, and to recognize and celebrate those who live the culture well, and to coach and to mentor and help those who need help behind the scenes, one-on-one, to sort things out. And every president, I know Jessica has so many challenges, Ritesh and now Gideon, whether it's on accounts or on succession planning, all these things require a healthy culture, which everyone must play a part in, whether it's someone who just joined a few months ago or someone who joined a few decades ago. Nelson, as you wanted the extra time, were there particular elements that you felt it would be good to cover in this extra time?
I think so. Two things, Mike. One is, so what? So we have a need for strategy. We have experts in strategy in the club. The question is, so what? What are we going just to stick there with a culture, a 93-year-old culture as a club? And secondly, I think individually, because most of the members of our club lead beyond the club. So how do we, that retreat Dr. Hopkins was talking about, Professor Hopkins, my bad, was talking about, how do we actualize it? And just having a day out as Rotarians, not just the board or whatever, just the Rotary Club, and decide, you know what, today we are discussing future. And not just future about the club, it's future about humanity. How do we recreate Rotary Africa? Because we are basically the pioneers of Rotary in Africa, technically speaking. So we should be leading the conversation. And you have the best minds in Africa. Dr. Hopkins, Mike, and everybody else in this club. So I think for us is to think, how do we think ahead and help the conversation and the strategy to be a bit bigger than our club, but more so to make our club more practical and be able to be relevant in the next season. The season could be 5, 3, 7 years. The second thing I was thinking about, Mike, is...
Hold on, before you go to the second thing,
okay,
is there an assistant governor in the room who could help us with a comment on bigger than the club? Ritesh.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll request if you can kindly repeat the question, as I want to make sure that I'm answering the question correctly.
Nelson was saying, you know, given who we are and what we can do, how can we, and I guess in the context of BHAGs, how can we be leaders in building something that's bigger than the club, including us beyond being Rotarians. Is that a fair summary, Nelson?
Yes, it is. And also the bigger Rotary community, especially our district.
Yeah, and Nelson was going all the way to continent-wide.
Ah, zone. Okay. Well, in Rotary, what I really like about Rotary is the fact that there is a framework. And with regards to anything individuals want to do, whether it is running a club, whether it is running a district, there is already structures and frameworks in place. And this is what is most appealing about Rotary. I'm not sure about other organizations such as Lions and all, but in Rotary, I do know for a fact, and especially in our club and beyond, we can see that every club is required to have its bylaws, constitutions. We've had many conversations in our club about amending bylaws, adding addendums to it. And it's not surprising that all other clubs have that as well. So at this point in time, I think every single club in our district, at least I'm aware, is running like any professional organization would. Now, I think in my case, since I am a member of Rotary Club of Nairobi and I'm privileged to be an AGM, it's a wonderful opportunity. What I'll share with you is something very interesting. Since the time I became a member, I was very fond of visiting many other clubs to understand how they work, their dynamic, and I immediately realized that our club is very unique, and every club has its own voice, and every club is unique in their own way, but we still can work together to achieve the 6 and now 7 areas of focus. So when it comes to doing projects, when it comes to having global grants, every club has a way of working together in achieving the projects. But Rotary Club of Nairobi is unique. And as much as, yes, the wind is changing and all clubs are changing, I think what works in our favor is respect. We must at all times work towards ensuring that our club is the most respected, whether it's the kind of members we have, whether it's the kind of speakers we have, the kind of projects we have, high impact, how we are actually going to be the leaders in terms of lead by example. And when I visited recently Rotary Club of Nairobi Connect and was introduced, they did not know much about me. It's a new club. But I was introduced as being a past president of the most prominent leading club in East and Central Africa. I think that's what we should work towards. We should work towards bettering ourselves so we can work at being respected, basically, in the district.
Jessica?
Could I also add?
Sorry.
Hold on, Margareta. Let's hear Jessica first. She's come in now. After Jessica.
Okay, I think we should have a sign that says "Leave egos outside" when you join the Rotary Club. Any Rotary Club, but we're talking about Rotary Club of Nairobi here. Leave egos outside. When we talk about a small project, no, not so small, called Amani Lazima, that I worked on in after post-election violence. We brought together people from the perpetrators of the crimes and the people who suffered the crimes, and we brought them together. We had Rotary, we had RC members working on that with, of course, me, my husband, and Mohammed Abdallah helped us to find some funding through USAID. And we ran a project that's very easy to do because these are people who are going to live in that community. But when you talk about our club, we have a framework. I've worked for the UN and I know frameworks. I know frameworks in and out. But when it comes to when you're dealing with volunteers, when you talk about people who are mature in every way, and they have predispositions of human nature kind, I think there are things we don't talk about, we don't articulate, that perhaps are in the back of our minds, that should we find a way to work with those without embarrassing people, without without doing something that's not Rotarian. I think there is a way, there could be a way that we can have something that might help our club. But as it is, we have a lot of work to do.
And the thing is that we have to have conversation about these delicate issues in ways that make them less delicate and lead to behavior change,
Yes.
not least in terms of ego levels.
For
the greater good. Margareta, your comment?
All I wanted to say is basically summarizing sort of what Jessica said. But when Ritesh was talking about respect for our club, I would say respect for our members. I think leaving ego at the door is one thing, but I think that if we are talking about respect for our club, it begins with respecting one another and appreciating that, you know, you are a member of the Rotary Club. I respect you for that. I mean, I think that's the most basic issue when it comes down.
Related to keeping your ego in check.
Yes.
And humility.
Yeah. Yeah. Respect. And respecting others. Everybody.
I want to come.
Can I ask a question? When you're talking about culture of the club, culture of we individuals, where we come from, culture of, tricky when I'm thinking about which culture, because it makes a big difference, the culture of the club, reflecting the culture of the people and where they have been, where they come from, how they are part of the club and who they identify with, all that, yes.
And the way we do things around here should be with respect, with collaboration, with all these good values that are reflected in how we behave with each other as friends in relation to other stakeholders, other clubs, beneficiaries, and so forth. I wanted to come back to this question of going beyond the club. Do you still have meetings of the various presidents around the clubs of Nairobi, around the clubs of Kenya, Ritesh, Jessica, and that can lead to collaboration, economies of scale, specialization, synergy, and so on?
Having been the last one before Ritesh, I would say that most presidents, at the time your presidency comes to the end, you just want to go and bury your your head in the sand, go somewhere and just stay away from something that should have been celebratory, right? It's the opposite. But we do have a forum and we do share things, we share information, we share happenings, and it's not as active. We talked about getting together and having a reunion, a retreat somewhere, but I think it happened in smaller groups, whether they are on a culture basis or timing, I don't know, but we don't do it as much as I wish we did.
Ritesh, how is it in your year?
In our year, actually, it was very interesting in the sense that it was all virtual. Having said so, what Patrick Obat did very cleverly is he started having meetings with his incoming presidents every month, at least 6 months before the year began. And he was very particular in ensuring that most of us would become friends before the year actually begins. And
He's a great leader, Patrick.
yes, absolutely. And what actually happened during that year is many clubs, because of course COVID took place and people could not physically meet. So some projects which took place, such as the tree planting initiative, which was one of the highlights for that year, you could see up to 30 clubs join hands, coming all the way from Nidi, coming all the way from Mombasa, to central locations near Voi or near the Kiriata forest. And all these clubs did activities together. So there is a lot of opportunity. With regards to my currently stepping in as AG, I'm very fortunate to have 3 very special clubs, of which 2 are linked to each other. So Nairobi Connect being formed by Muthaiga, already I know for a fact that some of the projects they are eyeing are after learning from Muthaiga. So I noticed a synergy there. And Utumishi, as we all know, has a reputation of doing prosthetic, surgeries for limbs, prosthetic limbs. So already we had a conversation with them. And lo and behold, before the year begins, they're already planning as a small group of these 3 clubs to do a joint project next year, and that might materialize. So there's a lot of prospect.
What advice will you give to our incoming president and board in terms of collaboration with other Rotary clubs? And let's equally emphasize collaboration with Rotaract, which I think has got better and better over the years, bearing in mind the first comment we got from Eileen about older people not ignoring the younger ones. I don't know if Eileen was talking about Rotarians to Rotarians, but definitely Rotarians need to partner very closely with Rotaractors, and including to benefit from the knowledge and skills and energy of the younger generation, including with inverse mentorship, as it's called, upward mentorship.
Yes. Well, you'll be very pleasantly surprised. You might already know this, but the district conference which took place in Mombasa recently was joint. There was no division between Rotaract and Rotary. And
no, I'm aware of that,
yes.
And it's a wonderful step. You know, I was the one when I was Rotaract district officer in the 80s who proposed that we have Rotaract conferences immediately before or after the Rotary conference, and people thought I was mad. But we did have the first one, and they've been happening since, and now it's become a seamless entity of adult to adult rather than parent to child, and I'm absolutely delighted.
That's fantastic. Now, coming back to the question you had of what I would say to the incoming leader, I would say that the district, since last year, actually, I've noticed, they choose one particular project, which is a district project. And Azib, during her year as well, has set very clear citation goals and has made it clear of where she wishes for clubs to partner. So I think that with regards to projects, the only advice I would give is, instead of going for too many smaller projects and having a limited number of active members participate in burnout, doing, haphazard work here, there, and everywhere, it's best to align one strategy with the district strategy and do something with greater impact.
That's a very important point to bring into a strategic retreat. Nelson, for the second time, I'm coming back to you with 10 minutes for us to go. You had a second point.
I think my second point probably would be drawing back to the book. I know that was the point on conversation. So what set of activities we need to do as a club to bring home what we've discussed? And I think that would have to be the president, the incoming president, perhaps, Rotarian Ambassador Josephine, to tell us how do we bring back to the basics of the club, the most prestigious club. And secondly, we have an advantage, disadvantage, and we are leaders who come together with different cultures, both racially and from where we come corporately, because we lead teams out there. So when we come, we have different ideas on how to serve humanity. So we probably need, with your permission, I would suggest to Josephine a session which is both generic and specific to the club. Generic to the members, but specific also to the club. So, and that would benefit in a big way, especially the new Rotarians. So I would request this conversation, if it can be pushed to the next level, whereby it's a club level, whereby Rotarian Mike is able to help both the individuals at the club to raise the level of leadership strategy, because that's the only future we have. It is the leadership level we take to the various places we go. Honestly speaking, because I think we have so much management and too little leadership going around. So I think, and I request Mike, with your permission, to suggest that you take us through that journey moving forward.
My immediate thought, my immediate thought, Nelson, is that yes, Josephine and all her other board members should listen to the recording of this conversation among ourselves.
Yes.
And for them to propose a reaction to what we have been talking about, including and not least what you have just suggested. It's unfortunate that Josephine and I don't know if any of the other board members are on this book club, maybe not. So fortunately, it is being recorded. And I think that because we are not the incoming board, we must request them to listen to it, to reflect on it, and to react to it. And through you as the leader of this book club. And of course, I'll be available as a resource, support, whatever.
Okay. Yeah, be the patron, you have a lot of respect and you have contributed so much in this club. So I think I'll lean into you and to progress this conversation, because I don't believe reading without leadership makes too much sense. And that was the basis of this book club. Just being able to lead was very important for us. And the good thing about almost half of the next board is in this book club. So I'll reach out to you to see how best to pursue that conversation and ensure that discourse actually come to materialize to the better of the club. Because the club at 93, these are two generations, something might have changed. But I will reach out to you and then, but I thank you, Ritesh, for such deep conversations and insights into what the district is doing. I think you are the new leader, the new generation leader we have been looking for. And I can't wait for you to be the DG and just lead this district to the new level with the insights you have from the members of this club. But having said that, I know we have 2 minutes to time. I request that we close this session. So thank you so much, Mike, for this and for all you've done. I know there's so much would have been covered a whole day, not 2 hours, but thank you for squeezing it into 2 hours or slightly above 2 hours. We really appreciate.
You're
then
welcome.
second,
And the good news is that 45 of us are physically together on Thursday. That's a
yes,
great opportunity to move this forward. And ideally, for Josephine and her fellow board members to have listened to the recording of this evening before then.
absolutely, yes. Because I think conversations, they create. So when you have, when you discuss things, they create a bigger thing. When minds come together, they create something bigger than ourselves. So, and I will probably, because you're my senior, I will probably request you that you could request Josephine to think about listening to this before Thursday, and then you can have that conversation.
Wanted to be part of this evening. She had another engagement, which obviously prevented her. So I think as a courtesy, you can forward the recording to her and say, let's talk about its consequences, or as you nicely put it, it's so what?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. But thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate. I don't know what the book club will do without you, because you've been so resourceful to us, and I don't know what we'll do to reward you for all you've done. But you've left a legacy in our minds and hearts. That is what is most important. So I think the next agenda would be, we have another quarter. We are going to another quarter of reading books. So I want us to suggest books, not because we like them, but because we want to see where our conversations need to go to. It's one thing to like a book, and it's one thing to know, to be strategic. Since we have covered strategy, I want us to suggest books which lead us to the next level. So I'll be floating that conversation in our chat group for us to think about the next books, the next 3 books, which is June, July, August. But for now, I am 1 minute more than we had proposed. If there are barring no other comments, I will request we close that in the next 1 minute. So allow everybody in the chat right now probably to say a comment as we wind up, and we can wind up in 2 minutes. Margareta, please.
No, I'd just like to thank everybody. I am one of the directors with Josephine. And I think it's a good idea, Nelson, if you share this tape with her. She's very open and she's got lovely ideas herself. Thank you. It's been a wonderful session. Thank you, Mike, and everybody else.
Thank you, Dr. Margareta. Eileen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this, as this is my first time and I really took a lot from it. Thank you, Mike, for moderating this session. It was lovely to get to just know more about strategy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dr. Beatrice.
Thank you all very much. It's been great to be as present as I could be. You may have noticed I was having some trouble with my connection here, but I'm ever so grateful for 2 things: that I'm assured of great minds and great ideas, and secondly, that this has been recorded. I think that one of the genius or silver bullets regarding the book club is that it has evolved as a think tank, and I've stolen that from Mike. But I think that even as we pursue our ideas, the best outcome would be that we are able to execute upon them. So long live the book club and the think tank. Let's now it on to action, and I will be supporting that all the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Beatrice. Pipi, Jessica. As we wait for her to log in, I can hear from IPP Ritesh.
Thank you so much, Rotarian Nelson. You are most kind. And I mean, the conversations which take place on this forum. Thank you so much, Mike, for this wonderful session. The conversations which take place here with such wonderful, incredible minds, it's like a masterclass each time. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Jessica, you're there? With the absence of Jessica, I will ask, please, Mike, to say a few words before then we can call it a day.
Yes, what I'd very much like to say is how much I'm looking forward to dinner and how much I don't want to delay anyone any longer either. And to thank you for being with me this evening. I enjoyed it very much. It's lovely, as always, for me to be part of this great club with its delightful members.
Thank you, Prince Mike. And I wish one day we would have a physical meeting just to glean and lean in on our thoughts. But one day, one time, hopefully soon, we will have a physical book club meeting and just learn from each other. But thank you very much, and good night to all.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.